Let's play it louder.
Come on, we'll clap our hands and stamp our feet. And when we've got a steady beat,
put another nickel in the Nickelodeon. Let the leader man begin. Some music, 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 music.
A little before we came on the scene, in 1942, the government had set up the Cost of Living Index Survey Committee. And it revealed some very depressing statistics that an average family of 4.5 persons was earning $7.41 per week and spending $8.23 per week. The explanation for that was that the worker was always in debt to the shopkeepers and other people, to the landlord to whom they owed rent. In the sugar estates, you had barrack-type ranges from the days of slavery, and in periods of heavy rainfall, these were all flooded. People had to go through from one part of their lodgings to other parts in boats. By and large, conditions were pretty awful for the working people. What one writer described as below human decency. It is against these things, of course, that we fought.
In 1948, I was living in Covent Garden here. A terrible strike we had in parties, and lots of beating up and throwing out and all this kind of miracle. We had shooting all in and more. We had shooting up in the north all about. They had problems. In 1948, we have 5 persons dead. The police them. They got arrested and called in and the government permit them and they go in and they do it. Well, you know, that was colonial government time. Time you can't sit home at all. You can't sit home at all. In them time that if you're up today and you go out tomorrow morning, you get the field foreman them come and then take you out from the home and then carry you to work. Then open the door, then break open the door. That was the state rules, right? And then take you and then carry you to the back down. You will have to do your work. You can't let the work done. Once you're working with them, you can't let the work done. Until I work and work and work until we get past it, then per day.
Women are dying here for us. Oh, women are dying here for us. All right inside. Whiny wine. Up and down. Oh, there we are.
You had a report in 1948 on education, for instance, which talked about overcrowding and 25% of the children going to school being necessitous. You had a high incidence of malaria, tuberculosis, and the death rate were more than twice as much as in North American countries.
Now, we would actually read poems at a workers' meeting, and much of our basic organization went on among sugar plantation workers from field and factory, bauxite workers, timber workers, employees in the urban centers. And always the impact was the same. The language was very simple, arising out of a situation which we knew. The images were very clear. And the effect of these poems was always to give hope to the working people in struggle. His themes came from the people. He seemed to be refining them and returning them to the people in a much clearer way, in a way that gave them wider perspectives of reality.
The Terror and the Time. That's a film made by Dr. Rupert Rupnarain and Ray Krill. The Terror and the Time. A film about Guyana's struggles in the 1950s. 1950s.
From the agony of the dark hut in the shadow and the hurt of things, from the long days of cruelty and the long nights of pain, down to the wide streets of tomorrow, of the next day, leaping I come. Who cannot see will hear. In the nigger yard, I was naked like the newborn, and naked like a stone or a star. It was a cradle of blind days, rocking in time, torn like the skin from the back of a slave. It was an aching floor on which I crept, on my hands and my knees, searching the dust for the trace of a root, or the mark of a leaf, or the shape of a flower. It was me, always walking with bare feet, meeting strange faces like those in dreams or fever. When the whole world turns upside down and no one knows which is the sky or the land, which heart is his among the torn or wounded, which face is his among the strange and terrible, walking about, groaning between the wind. And there was always sad music somewhere in the land, like a bugle and a drum between the houses, voices of women singing far away, pauses of silence, then a flood of sound. But these were things like ghosts or spirits of wind. It was only a big world spinning outside, and men born in agony, torn in torture, twisted and broken like a leaf, and the uncomfortable morning, the beds of hunger stained and sordid like the world, big and cruel, spinning outside.
Martin Carter reading his own poem, the famous I Come from the Nigger Yard of Yesterday. The Terror and the Time, a film made by Dr. Rupert Rupnarain, my comrade, and Ray Krill. And we earlier heard Dr. Chedi Jagan and the UC Kwayana and Halima, the sugar worker, recounting our first self-government in the year 1953. The year 1953, 70 years ago. 70 years ago. 70. Good evening to you and welcome to Politics 101. Tonight we are going to move as quickly as we can. We have Amanza Walton Desir in the house. We're starting a little bit early because I have double duty to do tonight. Please share the live. That's what Sherrod says. I say share the link. I'm an old timer, you know. Sherrod says share the damn live, man. I am much more polite. Please share the link. Amanza Walton Desir is here tonight. It's been quite a week. We had Sherrod himself here with his team on Monday. Last night we had Honorable Shadow Attorney General Roysdale Ford. Tonight, Amanza Walton Desir. Tomorrow night is a double header. We have Aubrey Norton at 6:30. And then at 7:45, we have Nigel Hughes. I think we've covered all the big guns this week as they prepare for the congresses, the People's National Congress. They're having their Congress starting on Friday, and the AFC's conference is on Saturday. And as in keeping with our all opposition solidarity on this program, we have opened our program to the candidates coming here and talking about their candidacies. And it's a kind of example we want to set, the tribalism that has so long hampered our politics. We want to say that we are all in this thing together. We may differ in terms of ideology, in terms of emphasis, in terms of perspectives. But every day, we are noticing there's one exception in this country, and that is the government of the party in government. And if we're going to move forward, we first of all have to remove that party, and then we sort things out after that. I am making the point that the PPP is an obstacle to positive change. I want to hail the democratic steps taken by the PNC and the AFC, opening up their congresses to competition among their leaders and open up to competition among their leaders, and the competition for office is healthy. Democracy must not be confined to the textbooks, and it must not be confined to the national elections alone. It is good that our parties are going down that road. Democracy, however, has its risks, because as we have seen, we've been visited by dirty campaigning. Dr. Jeffrey makes a distinction between negative campaigning and dirty campaigning. And we have to watch that. Watch yourself. Good evening. Let's roll because Amanza is here, ready to go. Amanza, good evening. Your song.
Hi, Dr. Hines. Can you hear me? Good evening.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Great. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for coming on this evening and to share with us the details about your candidacy. Let's get going right off the bat. Amanza, you are running for the top spot in one of the two major parties in this country. And you're running against an incumbent. It's not very often that people run against the incumbent in these big parties. I noted that in the PNC's 67 years, they've had, 5 leaders. which meant that there weren't too many challenges to the incumbents. When I think it was Hamilton Green threatened to challenge Desmond Hoyt, all hell broke loose. Dr. Jagan, nobody ever challenged him. Mr. Burnham, nobody ever challenged him. And so you are challenging a leader who won handsomely at the last party congress. I think he got over 75% of the vote. And so there must be something that is deep, something that is fundamental, that is driving you and others to challenge the incumbent for leadership. Tell us what that is on your part. Your audio's gone again.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Great. Well, Dr. Hines, thank you first of all for having me on your program. It's always a pleasure for me to be here with you. I didn't get as is customary our David Rudder Calypso, so but we will press on. Look, let me say that, as you've started by saying, our party is a democratic one. And yes, democracy sometimes is very messy. Sometimes it can be disconcerting, but it is a process nonetheless. And the constitution of our party provides that any member that believes he or she is capable of providing leadership to the party may step up to run for leader or leadership in the party, because I want to be clear that I have been nominated for several positions within the leadership, including leader, chair, vice chair, and a member of the CEC. So, I celebrate that democratic ethos of our party. Let me be very straight to the point about why I am running. I believe that it is time that we evolve as a party. And I believe that I have a very significant contribution to make in helping that evolution. What do I mean by evolution? We can no longer be a party that does things the way we are accustomed to doing it, in the way that we have been doing it, when the entire world, our country, is changing and it's moving ahead. I passionately believe in the objects set out in Article 2 of the PNCR's Constitution, and it lays out there a very clear vision for the development of Guyana. And so for me, it is about how do we position the PNCR as the largest coalition partner in politics in this country. How do we position the PNCR to contest the PPP, to hold the PPP accountable, and to deliver a quality and good life for every Guyanese? And so my contesting is what I believe is for the betterment and the better positioning and the repositioning and evolution of our party, and then by extension, Guyana.
Let me ask you, Amanza, a question that I asked the Honorable Roysdale Ford last night, and that I will ask Aubrey Norton tomorrow night. What kind of party? The PNC was born 67 years ago. It was born within the context of independence. So in a sense, it's an independence party, moving our nation from plantation to nation, holding our fragile polity together, steering the ship in the early years of independence. There was a particular need at that time and a particular party. And then we saw the 1980s. We came to the end of the 1980s, the Cold War, which really impacted Guyana tremendously, came to an end. The experiments at social mobility and social upliftment, socialism and nationalism, those experiments came crashing down as the countries were unable, Guyana was unable to foot the bill for all of those programs. And we moved into the era of structural adjustment where the IMF and the World Bank began to dictate to us. And Mr. Hoyt took the reins of power in 1985 when Forbes Burnham, the founder leader, passed away. And I dare say that Forbes Burnham himself, before he passed away, had begun to recognize the need to transition the party to the new era. And Hoyt transitioned the party to a new era. There was stout resistance, as I recall, to dismantling Burnham's legacy. Hoyt, however, saw the party through that period. And I think we come to the present, where we have now moved into the era of the petrol state. We have now moved into the era of a government that is flush with money. We have now moved into the era again where we begun in the 50s with geopolitics, beginning again to shape and reshape our politics. I'm asking you, what kind of PNC is needed? What kind of party? It certainly can't be the 57 party. It can't be, I'm arguing, I don't want to put it to you because you're a lawyer, right? Lawyers put things to people. People don't put things to lawyers, right? So I'm not putting to you, but I'm submitting that it can't be the Hoyt kind of party. It has to be a different kind of party as we go into this new era. How do you envisage the PNC? What kind of party you think the PNC ought to be in this era? I dare say I talked about geopolitics. I talk about the economic imperatives of the petrol state. But I also must add that we are in the face of naked. I've never seen a post-colonial state in the Caribbean so nakedly discriminatory against an ethnic group in its country. I have not Burnham, not Jagan, not Eric Williams, not Errol Barrow. These are leaders who have to deal with the ethnic and racial problem.
Right.
And we're in the face of a government that is using the state to really crush one ethnic group. So I'm stating those big things to ask what kind of party you see, if you agree with my thesis, to meet the challenges of the time.
Well, Dr. Hines, I do agree with your thesis, and your thesis underscores the very reason that I'm running for leadership within the PNCR. We need to be a nimble party. We need to be a party that is able to adapt and to change with the changing times. We need to have a party that will demonstrate its understanding that our demographics are changing and shifting, that for the first time, 60% of our population is under 40 years of age. And so we have to transform ourselves into a party that will attract that demographic to us. We have to become a party that is data-driven, that is data and information driven. I cannot overemphasize that enough, because very often we make decisions too much out of emotions and feelings, and we do not pay the deference to data that we need to pay. So I want to see a data-driven party. I want to see a party that is able to harness technology, that is able to leverage technology and able to harness innovation, so that we can be propelled into becoming a world-class party. Because Guyana, as you have noted, is now a petro state. We're no longer a backwater country, as people once considered us. We are now front and center. And so we have to transform ourselves into a world-class party. Look, the founder of the PNCR understood very clearly, and it set out very clearly in the constitution of the PNCR, that we understand that we must be a mass-based, multi-ethnic movement. But make no mistake, Dr. Hines, it is also an organization, a political organization, but an organization nonetheless. And therefore, it has to be informed by principles of organizational management, of organizational leadership. Because this old methodology of what we call the waterfall paradigm in management has gone. We're talking now about agility and about agile management. And that is what I'm passionate about bringing to the PNCR. I believe that we have to evolve as we are evolving as a country. We cannot use 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, 1990s solutions for 2024 problems. And I believe that we are uniquely positioned as a multi ethnic mass based party to do that. We have to hold the government accountable. Look, I have traversed this country, and a large part of me running for leadership is coming directly from the feedback that we have gleaned from, as we say, the streets and the communities as we go about. As I travel this country, Guyanese are very clear. MP, we appreciate the fact that you are willing to stand toe to toe with the PPP and take them on, not only in Parliament, but in the news, on social media, on the issues. We appreciate the fact that you are able to hold them to account. We appreciate the fact that you are a staunch advocate for our rights and that you speak up, and your speaking up encourages us to speak up. And so all of this feedback is saying to me that our people are anxious for change, Dr. Hines. And we have to be able to deliver that change to them. Gone are the days of believing that we can do whatever we wish to do and the people have to accept it. This is a different time, and we're dealing with a different generation. And we're dealing with a generation that will hold us to account for our actions. We're dealing with a generation that understands that they want a future. They're tired of the PPP corruption. They're tired of the PPP discrimination. They see that we have resources abounding, but only a few are enjoying it. They see rights of Guyanese being trampled every day. And so we do not have time to say, oh, this is somebody's time and this is not whose time. The people of Guyana are demanding change, and they are demanding change now. And as a party, we have to step forward and deliver that change to them.
We must deliver that change. The party has to change. You have said that very clearly. But change is something that is really a meeting of forces. I want to invoke the Jamesian model of the fusion of time, place, and person. And James's thesis is that there is a time we talk about this new era in Guyana, this place called Guyana, in this neighborhood, Venezuela, America up the road, and so on. And then there has to be the person. James's argument is that the leader has to be able to absorb the energies of the time. The leader has to be aware of the energies of the time. As you said, you walk this country, and I'm glad to hear that. I try to do that when I'm here, and it's amazing what you hear from the people, and it's not always what we think. When you go down, I was in Hope Town on Saturday, and it's a microcosm. I was at the funeral, and so the community was there. And I am telling you, what I heard from those people, first of all, I heard an awareness, I heard a consciousness that I had begun to doubt when I listen to people. Like, I need people taking nonsense, this government doing things, what I need people to do, I need people stupid. And when I listen to those people, they are sharp like a razor blade.
Absolutely.
And so,
Absolutely.
right, the question I'm putting to you, what about your political upbringing? What about your social upbringing that you think prepares you to be the leader of this time, to be able to absorb the energies of the time, all right? And use it as a means of guiding the ship of your party and maybe ultimately the ship of state.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful question, Dr. Hines. I will start with where I was born and where I grew up. I was privileged to be born at number 50 Village, Quarantine, Berbice, a multi-ethnic village. And so from an early age, I was steeped in the understanding of what it meant to coexist with people of all races. And then moving to Linden, a town, understanding the dynamics of larger communities. Then I was blessed to go to be able to attend President's College, which was an experiment, I believe, that the founder leader of our party thought was important. I believe that he understood that by bringing together young Guyanese of different ethnicities, different social walks, different economic standing, and bringing them into one place where we eat, where we sleep, where we fellowship together, where we do Bible studies together, where we have sports together. I believe that he understood that that was the mechanism through which we would break the back of racism and discrimination in this country. And so I had the privilege of being on the receiving end of that type of education. And then I was brought up around the military. I was raised by a proud military officer. And that being around the military, around men and women in uniform, growing up on army bases, made me understand, because I saw firsthand men and women who loved this country enough that they would dedicate their life to its service. And so that shaped in me a particular love of country. And then I had a mom that was a phenomenal teacher. And she instilled in us excellence. Whatever is worth doing well. So growing up, my upbringing, what I was exposed to, and the love of country instilled in me. And then as a youngster, I was steeped in the traditions of the PNC, as it then was. You know, my parents were young cadets in the PNC. That's how they met. They were sent to Africa to study by the founder, leader Forbes Burnham. So I grew up in the PNC. I grew up being mentored by women like Lynette and Celeste Dolphin. My aunt was a very senior functionary of the WRSM. My mother led PNCR party groups. So from a very early age, whilst I resented having to sit in a party group meeting whilst they went through the new nation, I understand that all of those things conspired to shape me into the person that I am. When we talk about on the professional side, I have had the benefit of working in government as a public servant for over 2 decades. So I understand uniquely how government works. I have an in-depth understanding of how government works, from the Office of the Prime Minister, the Ministry of Public Works and Communications, to the aviation sector, to the maritime sector, to being and training young attorneys in law reform and legislative drafting, to now being a legislator in the legislature myself, working with international organizations such as CARICOM and the International Civil Aviation Organization, and understanding management paradigms and approaches, and my vast experience in managing projects and being able to deliver tangible successes. So for me, all of those things, I believe, conspire to make me someone uniquely positioned to, as you have put it, absorb the energy. Because I am current, I understand where we are as a country, and I understand very, very clearly what the PNCR needs to become in order for us to continue to be the vanguard party of this nation. So, for me, Dr. Hines, I believe that the time is now. And like I said, I believe that our people are anxious for change. And I hope to be able to be an agent for the positive change that Guyanese so desperately need.
Amanza, we started out the program. Thank you very much for those answers. As a professor, I have to acknowledge when I hear a good answer. As some of them are saying here tonight, Dr. Hines, you come out with some serious swing bowling tonight. I hope you're swinging the ball both ways, because you swing one way, after time you become predictable. You got to swing the ball both ways. Amanza, well, you're vying to be the leader, so you got to be a good batsman and be able to negotiate and navigate.
Absolutely, and roll with the punches and take the punches. You gotta be willing to be tried by fire. So that's
Yeah.
fine. That's all
My
right.
sister, look, I'm going to ask you this question, which I must ask. Anybody, as we would say in the village, anybody know me? I don't mind people business. I don't mind the PNC business. I ain't minding the PNC business. But I can't help but noticing that the democracy that we started to talk about has come this round of politicking. The democracy has brought with it some dirty campaigning. Dr. Jeffrey made a distinction between negative campaign, which he says is normative, and dirty campaign, which is not necessarily normative. I have to say, and I'll be frank, you will not respond to what I say. I have decided in this time that I spend in time working with Black people to help them, as we say in old time parlance, catch themselves, and I take on that work. And I have to say, when I see you all and you all surrogates in this campaign, as a Black man, I feel ashamed. I feel ashamed because I think we're better than that. I think we come out of a culture with our dignity, and whatever you say about Black people, they don't play with their dignity. All right, I know what is it to cuss down, but if me auntie and Miss Uriel cussing, and tomorrow morning I pass Miss Uriel and don't tell Shimanian, me auntie gonna cut me tail, right? You see, so there is a kind of manners and a kind of way of doing things that is part of the African community. I can't speak for other communities in the same way, but I can speak for Africans. And I think you all have been a little bit un-African, been a lot un-African in the way that the kind of dirtiness and nastiness that has come out of this campaign. I am not blaming you. I am not blaming Aubrey Norton. I am not blaming Mr. Ford. I am saying there is something about our political culture that ends sitting right with me, and I can tell you, ends sitting right with the vast majority of your supporters. Talk to me about that um, dirty campaigning, and what's your perspective on it?
Dr. Hines, I disagree with you in terms of blame. We, as leaders, have to take the blame. That is what leaders do. When things are not going the way they should, we as leaders take the blame. And so, I recognized very early. And so I issued a statement calling on members and delegates of the PPP to refrain and to conduct ourselves a certain way. I noticed the PPP took it to say that, I'm saying that the PNC can't run a country or whatever, but I was very, very clear that if we are to set the standard for the nation, we must first set the standard in our house. And I have no apologies for that. Personal attacks, the politics of personal persecution has no place in a Congress and in a party. And so I believe that I have been the only person so far to issue a very public statement at the risk of saying, you're talking party business, calling on our members to conduct themselves in a particular way, because I believe you lead by example. Now, it is too dirty. It is absolutely too dirty. And let me be clear, I wrote to both of my fellow candidates asking that we meet and that we discuss a way forward. I received a positive response from one candidate. I will not name that person because that is not what I am about at this juncture. But I have reached out. I have reached out no less than 3 times because I believe that whilst we are a democracy, yes, there have to be rules for engagement. And our supporters must, and our surrogates must respect us enough. I was quite disappointed because I noticed that there was a personal attack on me. The leader came out and distanced himself from that attack, but that attack still continued. That attack still continued, and that has no place in our party. That has no place. And we have to understand that when we say certain things, they do not have only implications for now. There is a party beyond Congress. I was so hurt, and I'll confess this because this is something that I take seriously. I saw a social media post suggesting that I was complicit in phantom activities because I was a public servant in the Ministry of Public Works and Communications in the office of the Prime Minister. Now that makes a mockery of the pain of mothers that lost their sons. It makes a mockery of the people who are still calling for justice. And we use that as cheap party politicking. Just that because someone was a public servant, that they can't be trusted. I've had, and you know, these things are dangerous. And they're deleterious, and they harm us as a party. They harm us as a people who are wanting to move forward and effect positive change. I saw all kind of pseudo psychological evaluations of me, etc., extracted from a period in my personal life when I had filed for divorce, etc., trivializing issues of abuse. And I take that seriously as a survivor of abuse because I will not stand for myself, for any other victim, or for my children to be re-victimized in the name of petty politics and people who do not understand the seriousness and the gravity of what we are about. I will not stand for it. And I have written to the leader about this matter because we must understand that they have implications for beyond now. If we are going to have a Congress, then we have to proceed on issues of policies, on issues of performance, and we have to shun this personal political persecution. It must stop and it must end. If we celebrate a democracy, we must also celebrate that we have to operate within the confines. We cannot be libelous of people. We cannot be slanderous of other people because we would not want that in our nation. And what we do not want to see in our nation, we must not practice in our own party.
In our own party, you know, thank you very much, Amanza, for your testimonial. And I've been searching my mind for the origins of this malady. And I got a call from a former PNC leader, former minister, an old man. And I got a call from him this morning. And he said, you know, David, when Congress time came around, we looked forward to Congress. It was a joyous time. We were doing all kinds of things at Congress Place. But this Congress seems to be about who will become leader rather than the business of Congress. And I say, yes, I think I got the answer now. And it was the same when the PNC had the PPP had their Congress, and I noticed the same with the AFC having their Congress. I think we are in the period where Congress now become about election rather than about organization and all of that.
And you're absolutely right. Look, as a young child, I was in what we call then the young developers. And so I have very fond memories of congresses from times past. They were kept at the exhibition center, if you recall.
Yes.
Right in Sophia, next door to Congress Place. And I recall because, you know, we were the little children that did the cultural items, right? And so I remember vividly the first Congress at which President Hoyt, I believe, was going to be contested. I remember we did a poem written by Lynette and Celeste Dolphin. It was a group of us drawn from all across the country. We were from the quarantine. We had young people from in Georgetown. We were all about 10 years old. And I remember she wrote this poem called Time Future. And some of the words were, we, the children of Guyana, are grateful, and we pledge time future because of times past and times present. And that poem did a chronology of exactly what you outlined as you began earlier about how the party would have evolved. And then it came to Hugh Desmond Hoyt, right? And she spoke about that poem spoke about a man born to lead has no choice, even if he has no followers with a kindred spirit. And it outlined the history of the party and up to where we were, because we had just begun the structural adjustment that you talked about. So there was a part of it that spoke about the IMF, the ERP, and the CIMAP. All you grown-ups know what that means, with hard work, dedication. And so I know the pageantry that attends the PNCR Congress, because I had the privilege with my siblings of being there. And it is more than just who becomes leader. It is about getting together and deciding who and the direction that we want to take our party, because we have the privilege of being a mass-based movement, and we have the privilege of being a party that says that the leader leads in consultation with the members. And this is why institutions like the General Council are very, very important. We should have 4 general councils every year. We've not been able to keep up with that. Those institutions are important for exactly the reason that you have outlined. Our groups are important for exactly the reason that you outlined. Because at the end of the day, it is about how do we move the party forward together. And this is why, Dr. Hines, you have the cut and thrust of good old campaigning, where you tease and you taunt and you jest, but we have gone beyond jesting, and we have to stop, and we have to demonstrate that we can be better, because I believe that we are better, and that we can campaign on performance, we can campaign on policies, we can campaign on impact, and the impact that we've made. Because I, for one, do not subscribe to the school of thought that, oh, you've been there for 300 years, and so this is some type of entitlement. I believe that as a party, we have to step back, look at what the data is telling us, look at what the information is telling us, listen to what people in the public spaces are saying to us, because they're the people that we need to attract to vote for us. So, you are absolutely right. It has been unfortunately reduced. I recall, as a little child, you'd come home with stacks of typewritten sheets like this of position papers put out at Congress, of sectoral papers put out and discussed at Congress. That rich intellectualism that characterized the PNCR, I believe we desperately need it now. And we have to have it as a matter of urgency, because we have to navigate, as we've said, this new petro state and the new realities of all of the resources that we have for the first time at our disposal.
Amanza Walton Desir here tonight, making our case for the leadership of the People's National Congress. Amanza, some quickies now. Either some bouncers or some square turning balls. You talked about coalition politics very early in your presentation. What is it you are going to do different if you're elected as a leader from what Aubrey Norton has been doing in relation to coalition? Let me give a frame. The PNC got into power in 1964 as part of a coalition with the United Force. When the PNC came back to power in 2015, it first entered into a partnership with the WPA, and that partnership was joined by the AFC, and then there were individuals who came in, because the APNU charter allows for individuals. I know some individuals call themselves parties, but I'm being very intellectual here. They're individuals. And so therefore, it would seem to me that the coalition trajectory has to be something that each leader and each contender for the leadership must think very seriously about. So I assume you come here armed with your answer. What are you going to do different from Aubrey Norton as far as maintaining, resuscitating, expanding, however you choose to frame it, the coalition that was so kind to the PNC in getting it back to power, first in 2011 when they won the election but not the presidency, and then 2015.
I have been very clear from the time I entered politics that coalition politics is the politics that will take Guyana forward. And so for me, I'm very clear in my own mind. And I believe it is important that as leaders, we be honest with our membership. We be honest with the people who look to us to lead. And to indicate to them truthfully that this is the politics of the future. Having had that paradigm shift, because the paradigm shift is important, because if you accept that this is a reality, it informs the way that you are going to operate. And in the case of the PNC, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. We have the APNU. And so for me, greater emphasis needs to be placed on that vehicle. We must embrace it. We must allow for it to grow, to flourish, because it is the politics of the future. You look at India, for example, when everybody thought that Mahendra Modi had it locked, he had to enter into a coalition. You look at South Africa, you see the reality of that. So anybody that will say to us that that is not a present reality is misleading. So for me, it would be strengthening the APNU. Like I said, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Strengthen it, respect the components of it. But of course,
Amanza, let me get a little bit a little bit direct here with you. The WPA, which was the second party in the APNU, left. They're no longer. The APNU linked up with the PNC. The AFC, sorry, linked up with the APNU. The AFC is partnering with the PNC in Parliament. Outside of Parliament, they're gone. What are you going to do to rekindle what I call the fulcrum of the coalition?
Well, the first order of business would be working to get you back, Dr. Hines, and the WPA back, because we need you back in the APNU. We are stronger together and we're better together. As it relates to the AFC, look, I have had the privilege of working with particularly the younger members of the AFC. And we have cultivated a relationship of mutual respect, which I believe is fundamental to making any coalition work. Yes, there have to be ground rules. Yes, you cannot be entitled to more than what you bring. Those are fundamentals of any coalition. But I believe that with respect, with dialogue, and with an honest commitment to coalition politics, it will work. It has worked before, as you have so aptly described in times past, and it will work again. What it requires, like I said, is a paradigm shift, not only lip service, but a paradigm shift that says we accept that coalition politics is here to stay. That anybody that tells you that at this point it is not an option for us as the PNC is misleading you. Having established that, we then proceed to respectfully dialogue with coalition partners, because I truly believe that that which binds us together is greater than that which separates us. So we cannot shirk from these challenges. We have to confront them head on. We have to meet. We have to have meetings. We can't have a situation where APNU is not meeting in 2 years. That is not acceptable. It ought not to be acceptable. They are our coalition partners, and at the bare minimum, we must treat them with the mutual respect that they deserve. So for me, Dr. Hines, that is where I would forge, because I truly believe that which binds us together, that which is in our common interest, is far greater than that which divides us. And I will start from there and work forward.
Amanza, moving quickly along, the the issue of the oil and gas industry is something that is front and center, and any leader of any political party has to deal with that. I want to confine you to the issue of the oil contract, renegotiating the oil contract or not. Mr. Norton, in my estimation, has been walking a very tightrope when it comes to that. Are you going to follow his model, or are you going to do something differently when it comes to the contract? Your audio's on.
You asked me about the oil contract, Dr. Hines, and I ask you, what about the energy sector?
All right.
What about the energy sector? Because
yeah.
you see, we do ourselves a disservice when we pigeonhole ourselves in that manner. We have to look at the entire oil sector, the energy sector in our country. Let's start from the beginning. We have to get ourselves in order as a nation. We do not have the institutional capacity present to manage a sector. We must immediately establish whether it is a petroleum commission or a national oil company. We must do that, like most other countries that are managing this resource, like they have done. It is the thing to do. At a bare minimum, we should not have even disbanded the agency headed by the good gentleman. I don't remember his name right now, Dr. Mark. We should not have even disbanded that. So Dr. Mark Bino is his name.
Yes.
At the bare minimum. So let's start with putting our house in order, because our house is not in order. So let's establish that mechanism. And then, of course, Dr. Hines, we have to begin to equip ourselves with capacity. We have to go out there and we have to retain a world-class firm, counsel, lawyers, engineers on retainer to be able to properly advise us. Investment bankers, world-class investment bankers. So we have to augment our capacity.
Are you going to renegotiate the contract? Are you going to renegotiate the contract?
No. I am coming to that. What I am sharing with you, because you see, I'm not going to be pigeonholed into
I got you.
saying yes or no. What I'm saying is that there has to be a holistic look at the sector. So I'm coming to the contract. I'm saying institutional capacity in the manner that I've outlined, retaining investment bankers and world-class legal counsel, engineers that are on retainer. This is what countries that are serious about managing their oil resources in a serious manner do. Not just leave it up to one man, Barry Jack deal with two underlings to manage an entire sector. Now, having done that, what we need to do is get a competent person. Many countries have what they call an oil czar. We have the benefit of learning from the mistakes of other countries, bringing expertise from the US, from the Middle East, bring in expertise in order to be able to manage that. And that expertise must be understudied by Guyanese so that there's technology and knowledge transfer. Now, when we would have equipped ourselves with the capacity to properly negotiate, then is when we go into any notion about renegotiating. Because I want to be clear, the current situation is untenable. But I also want to be clear that the oil companies, we have said that there's a 30-year lifespan of this. So they are long-term strategic partners. And so having augmented our capacity, we now go in to sit and to come to solutions that are mutually acceptable. Because these are our long-term partners, whether we like it or not. And there are a number of models and alternatives that could be explored. Pilots, for example, payments in lieu of taxes. You talk about issues like increased corporate social responsibility and how they can become more actively involved in giving back and managing and funding projects, etc., within the country. Now, when we do that, what we are demonstrating is that we, one, understand that the US, Exxon, etc., that they're long-term strategic partners, and that we have to come to mutually acceptable solutions. Make no mistake, whilst these are our long-term strategic partners, they must understand that Guyanese must come first. Guyana and Guyanese must come first. They must also understand that Guyanese being satisfied is very important to maintaining the peace, stability, and prosperity of the country so that we maintain a particular investment climate. And oil companies must also understand that they have a duty, and indeed in Guyana, an opportunity to demonstrate that the involvement of large oil companies and conglomerates in a country does not necessarily have to spell doom and gloom, that there are actually ways that we could have a true partnership with an oil company that sees Guyana and Guyanese developing, and oil companies having made their investments, being able to recoup their investments. And so for me, it has to be a holistic review of the sector and not just renegotiating or negotiating, because like I've outlined, for those reasons we have to be far more holistic in our approach. I want to be clear, the current prevailing circumstances are untenable, but I also want to be clear that we view these companies, we view the US companies, we view all of these other companies as long-term partners, and as long-term partners we have to be able to come to the table and to craft mutually acceptable solutions that will see an enhanced partnership.
You haven't said whether you will renegotiate the contract or not.
No, I have said that once we build capacity, you come to the table and you are able to craft solutions that uphold the sanctity of contract. It is a it is it I've said that very, very clearly. I don't know how much more clearly
All right. All right. Amanza, if you become leader of the PNC, you've talked about coalition politics. Elections are next year. Um, there is talk about a consensus candidate. As leader of the PNC, are you willing to step aside for a consensus candidate other than yourself inside of the PNC or outside the PNC? So let me say, are you willing to step aside for a consensus candidate outside the PNC? Are you willing to step aside for a consensus candidate within the PNC, or will you be hard and fast that as leader of the PNC, you have to be the presidential candidate?
What I will commit to being is being guided by data. What I will commit to be is to be guided by what the statistics say. Numbers win elections. Not how Amanza feels or what Amanza thinks. Numbers win elections. And so and this is why it is important as a party, we embrace data and information. Bless you, Dr. Hines.
Thank
This
you.
is why we must embrace that. So for me, the posturing about who will yield to what or whatever, what do the numbers say? What do the numbers say? And of course, once those numbers are brought, it has to be a decision of the party. I would say to any party that it would be irresponsible to make such hard and fast pronouncements without the benefit of polls, without the benefit of interrogation, because that is not something that should be arrived at lightly or based on who feel or who win both long or who might be entitled. I cannot subscribe to that modus operandi.
But you are open. You're open to whatever possibility the data, according to you.
Whatever the data shows us, and once that is brought to the party and they are able to accept it, because again, the leader of the party manages in consultation with its members. We got a constitution, and whilst others may believe it's fine to shirk the party's constitution, I am not minded to so do.
If you win this election and become the leader of the party, are you prepared to call Roysdale Ford and Aubrey Norton and said, be part of my executive team?
Roysdale Ford, leader Norton, every
No,
person.
I'm asking about those two.
Absolutely. No, listen, you see, absolutely. I am a firm believer that every person has their strength. And as a leader, I believe that it is my duty to identify their strengths and unleash them to function in that capacity. I am not afraid of anybody outshining me or whatever, because the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. You know, the whole is more important. And so if your capacity dictates that you operate in a particular capacity, yes, you have to be released to so do. So for me, absolutely, Mr. Norton is a has tremendous understanding of politics, etc. Mr. Ford has legal acumen like I've not seen in some time. And these are strengths that have to be channeled for the greater good, which is why when we see candidates being excoriated on Facebook and on social media, it is so distressing, because we have not taken the time to identify the strengths in these people and say that we need them. We need everybody. We need Aubrey Norton. We need Roysdale Ford. We need David Granger. We need every person, and any person that will say to any member of our party that we don't need that and we don't need this is dangerous, because we need every hand on deck. We cannot win an election with half of our field sitting on the benches. It will not work. We need all hands on deck.
If you are not successful in your campaign, if you do not become the leader, are you prepared the next day to work with Mr. Norton in a constructive way?
I am working with Mr. Norton now in a constructive way. And so for me, that continues. Whoever emerges as leader of the party, we have a people who are waiting for change. They're anxious for change. And so I have never shirked from supporting, and I don't intend to begin now. For me, sorry, no, for me, it is vitally important. It is vitally important that every shoulder be put to the wheel.
Mr. Norton has shown some hesitancy when it comes to street protests as we know it, as we knew it in the past. He has some hesitancy about committing the party to street protests. Do you agree with him, or do you see it differently?
Look, I understand his concerns, but I am of the view that protest and peaceful demonstration is a cornerstone of a democratic society. I absolutely believe that it is. Do I understand his hesitation given the current government and their inclinations to engage in criminal acts against Guyanese? I absolutely do. But at the end of the day, power concedes nothing without a demand being placed on it. It never has and it never will. Nothing comes without struggle. And a part of struggle is peaceful protesting. And for me, I look back at the way the world was changed, and I look back at the way civil rights, for example, in the U.S., they were obtained. And you know, MLK, etc., they didn't sit it out and say, no, we're not going to protest. They believed in what they believed in strongly enough to protest. When I go out to protest on a matter, Dr. Hines, it is because I believe with every fiber of my being that I'm standing up for what is right. And that is my right to stand up for what is right. So for me, tactically employed, peaceful protest is still a significant weapon in the arsenal against oppression and discrimination.
There is a view that the hands-off approach, the hands-off tactic, certainly in front of the scene. I don't know what happened behind the scene, but in front of the scene, if that is a term, the hands-off attitude of Mr. Norton and his team to the teachers' strike. Some people are of the opinion that it had the PNC leader and his team, the party, taking a more proactive posture in supporting the teachers' strike. The outcome could have been different. If you become leader, and I am predicting the teachers are going to go back on strike when they come back after the August break. If you become leader, what are you going to do different? If at all you think that something different should be done?
Look, for me, it has to be done in consultation with the union. This is their strike. And so if there is a request that you have to consider their requests. And I want to be very, very clear and straight on this. For me, I took a decision that I will stand with the teachers, and I was out there because Barra Jagdeo does not get away with an excuse of clouding teachers' protest as political. He does not get away with saying that we should not um, support our teachers in their just struggle for a livable wage. You will recall when the teachers struck under the APNU AFC, he was front and center in demanding a livable wage. So for me, the teachers have a just cause. They have a just struggle. I have stood with the teachers and I have been unapologetic about standing front and center with the teachers and adding my voice to the chorus. And I believe that the party has indeed added its voice to the chorus of calls for our teachers to be paid a livable wage. Once their struggle is just, I am prepared to support the just struggle of any Guyanese. Because,
So you are going to support the Northern stance?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry?
You're going to support the Northern stance?
No, I am saying that I will
Or you're going to do something different?
I am saying that I will openly support our teachers.
Well, Norton, I think, argued that he supported behind the scenes.
Look,
what I'm asking, will you continue to support behind the scenes, or are you going to be much more forthright in supporting them on the ground in the open space?
For me, I will be much more forthright in supporting them.
Thank
Mind you, again, this has to be done in consultation with the union.
Yes. I heard that.
So that is my caveat. I've been there. I've been on the picket line with our teachers, openly advocating for them. Listen, I'm the daughter of a teacher, and I understand what it takes. She raised 6 children, and then she went to school because she was the head teacher and raised hundreds more. And so to have to come home and have to think about what you'll eat, how you'll feed your own children. I am prepared to stand for teachers now. And once I believe that their demands are reasonable and we have the fiscal space to accommodate it, I believe in supporting our teachers. Our teachers birth every other profession in this nation. It is a shame that with all of our resources, Dr. Hines, we are paying our teachers the lowest in the Caribbean, second only to Haiti. I saw where Dr. Vincent Adams put it so eloquently, a nation that produces nutmegs as its chief export is paying their teachers more than Guyana, that is exporting billions of dollars in oil. So, those are my thoughts on that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Amanza, you're African Guyanese. It's 3 African Guyanese running for the leadership of the PNC. And when I look across at the PPP, I see the elect a 35-man thing, share Indian, all Indian, a 15-man thing, all Indian. The point I'm making is that our 2 parties, in fact, all our parties, are ethnically supported. I cannot think of any party in Guyana that its support is not grounded in one of our ethnic communities. If you become leader of the PNC, how would you balance your responsibility to the community that gives you 95% of your vote historically, and I'm certain that will continue? How do you, 95 may be exaggerating, but you know what I mean. How do you balance your responsibility to that group, which is taking a special kind of hammering? Now, we know that governments hammer the working class everywhere. And so the working class of all ethnic groups are being hammered. But when you hammer teachers, when you take away apology money, when you kick down people, not kick down, broke down at Moko and Hillfoot and Linden, it's African Guyanese. So there is a special kind of hammering among the hammering of the working class. There's a special kind of hammering for Black people. Perhaps at no time the leadership of the PNC has had to face this onslaught on its supporters by the opposite group. Jagan didn't go all out in terms of beating up Black people, so the PNC could dance in between. I am saying no, the party cannot afford to stand by and to allow its people to be beaten up. It has to defend those people as part of its everyday praxis. How do you intend to balance defense and protection of your support base while ensuring that the party remains a national party that appeals to all ethnic groups? How do you balance the two?
Dr. Hines, we have to, I believe, be very frank with the evolution of our country and understand the disparity that was created at the end of the institution, the horrible institution of slavery, and at the end of indentureship, and the economic gap, that the way in which those institutions were concluded, the way it created an economic gap from since then. That has been exacerbated by a PPPC administration that has manifestly and overtly discriminated against Afro-Guyanese. And what they have skillfully done is that they have conditioned or attempted to condition Guyanese to think that when you talk about discrimination and you talk about racism, you are the racist. Well, I reject that. I completely reject that. And I acknowledge that we will have to begin to speak to our people about understanding that we will need to employ equitable means for us to bring up to the level. We can't talk about a level playing field unless we first talk about employing equity. Equity means that you might need a little more than this one because of pre-existing circumstances with which you come to the table. But we have to begin, it all starts with the conversation. We are falling into the trap of thinking that when we speak about these difficult subjects that we are being somehow racist and discriminatory in our approach. We are not. What we are seeking to do is to acknowledge and address, listen, the UN, with the implementation of the Decade of People of African Descent, the UN itself has acknowledged that Africans around the world in the diaspora are a group that have suffered and that continue to suffer. So we're not having a new conversation here. Are you going to be saying the UN is racist in its practice and its ideology? Is that what you're suggesting? So the UN itself has recognized that there is a problem with the descendants of Africans in particularly the diaspora. And they have identified the need for urgent intervention to remedy the ills that they have identified as a United Nations body. So for me, you have to begin to look at advocating for equity for this group of people that the UN itself has said have been marginalized, discriminated against, and up to today are living with the effects, to the point that it is now a question of being in their DNA of this horrible institution of chattel slavery, where the lives of Africans were not seen as valued. They were not considered human. They were considered chattel property. So for me, it is about beginning to have that conversation and positioning it in understanding that advocating for the rights of Afro-Guyanese doesn't make you racist. The world over, the United Nations has recognized that this is a problem. And for us to heal as a nation, we have to appreciate that it is a problem. And we have to help other ethnic groups to understand that to the degree that we do not address the maladies that affect one of our groups, of our ethnic groups, is the degree to which we will not be able to forge that Guyanese identity that we so badly need to forge. And Dr. Hines, now more than ever, we need to forge a Guyanese identity. Everyone is running into Guyana, and Guyanese are being relegated to third-class citizens in their own country. And so we need to adopt this paradigm of putting Guyana and Guyanese first. But before we can do that, we have to be clear as a nation that we are prepared to address the unique circumstances of each of those ethnicities. Our indigenous brothers and sisters have their own unique circumstances that warrant addressing. Our Afro-Guyanese brothers and sisters have their own unique set of circumstances that need addressing, as has been recognized by the international community. So we have to begin from that point, Dr. Hines. And we as leaders have to lead our nation and our people along that path.
Thank you very much for that answer. I don't care who vexes with me sometimes. I have to say, I have asked that question to many PNC leaders, and let me say, this is the clearest and most thoughtful answer that I have gotten from any contemporary PNC leader on the race question. I say no more. Amanza Walton Desir, my friend, because you're my friend. All right? You are my friend.
You are my friend.
I just wear my friend them for my sleeve, my collar, my face, no my spectacle, and everything. Thank you very much for coming tonight and being very candid.
Absolutely, my pleasure to be here.
With me, good luck on your candidacy.
Absolutely.
I think win or lose. I think BL Crombie, an old sport catcher, said win or lose. It doesn't matter. It's how you play the game.
Yes, and I'm proud of the way we've played the game. I'm very proud of my team.
Thank you very much. Any closing thoughts? Any closing thoughts? Any closing thoughts?
Just to say thank you, Dr. Hines, for having me. It's always a pleasure to come on here and to share my thoughts with you and my heart with you. I think, Guyanese are anxious for leadership. They're tired of politicians. They're tired of the excuse, oh, that's politics. Guyanese need leaders. We need leadership. And so I'm happy to be able to be considered a leader by many, and I'm happy to be able to contribute to the development of my country. We ought to love this land. I mean, this is where Providence has seen it fit to place us, and we must resolve that we will leave it better than when we found it. So thank you for having me, Dr. Hines. Always a pleasure.
Thank you very much, my sister.
All right, take it.
And Colin, no, it's not an endorsement. I call a spade, and I call a fork, and I call a shovel. No endorsement. No endorsement. Amanza's my friend. She's a comrade. We have always had an open relationship. I have the same kind of relationship with Aubrey Norton. We go back as boys way back in the 1980s when we were at UG together. I also have built up in recent times an excellent relationship with Mr. Roysdale Ford. So I really can't do the endorsement thing. No, not at all. As one of the leaders of the WPA, I have to be able to work with whoever is the leader of the PNC. So we can't do the endorsement thing. Thank you all very much for staying with us. And tomorrow night is a double header. Aubrey Norton is going to be here from 6:30, and we're going to go up to 7:45, and then Nigel Hughes is going to come on from 7:45 to 9 o'clock. So we are going with the double header tomorrow night. Aubrey Norton and Nigel Hughes. I'm going to see you all tomorrow night. Those of you who got some time, I'm going over to GlobeSpan to rumble and tumble over there. See you all tomorrow night.